Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is Chris Andrews, head guy at the South Point Sportsbook, to discuss his book, Then One Day, 40 Years of Bookmaking in Nevada. Chris Andrews, I don't know what, it's an easy name. I don't know why I'm doing that. Chris Andrews, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Well, thanks for having me, you guys.
Before we get to the substance of the book, apparently it's Gill Alexander's fault that the book even got published. Tell us why it's Gill's fault.
Well, there's a couple of us, we'd all go out to dinner together, and we'd share some stories here and there. And I started telling some stories from the old days. I got here in 1979, so I got here long before a lot of those guys ever did. And I told them, and they were, and even though they've been in the business, they were kind of fascinated with just how this town has grown, how the business has grown. And eventually Gill said, I do this podcast. I think some of those stories would be great at the end of the podcast. Would you be interested in doing it? So I started doing it, and it got popular, and a lot of people were writing into us and saying, you got to put this in a book. You got to put this in a book. I'd never really thought about it myself. And finally, Gill and others convinced me, put this thing in a book. And then we shopped it around, and Anthony Curtis here at Huntington Press was kind enough to, publish it for us, and it's turned out really good.
It did turn out good. It is a book of stories. A lot of the stories he tells about sports betting, about crazy people who were there. I was never a sports bettor, but I did go to a backgammon club daily for all through the 70s. And I'm pretty sure every one of these crazy people he talks about came to the Cavendish West. It's not, but they had different names, but I recognized the types in the gambling world at that time, and it was fascinating to me.
The first thing that struck me about it was how incestuous the sports betting, the bookmaking side of it, you guys are all related to each other.
There's a bunch of us that are related, and even though we're competitors and we're all after the same dollars, we've remained pretty good friends. And Vic Salerno and I, when we were both in the satellite business, and we fought tooth and nail for every customer out there. But Vic's been to every baptism of my children and my weddings and everything else, and he's a dear friend. But like I said, you get us, it's kind of like, on a football field or basketball court, you cross that line and all of a sudden it's a different game, but off that, there's a lot of us are friends. A lot of us are related. My cousin, Art Manteris, who just recently retired from Stations. He's my first cousin. We grew up bookmaking together as young kids. My other cousin, Zach Franzi, who runs 2 properties down in Mesquite, which, the Sportsbook's down there. And then, of course, my uncle, Jack Franzi. And I found out later on in life that Jimmy Vaccaro, his aunt, and my grandmother were, immigrants to this country and were friends 100 years ago back in Pittsburgh. So, there's a lot there. It is incestuous, no doubt about it.
I'm guessing that would also apply to Sonny Vaccaro's grandmother.
Yeah, it would be Sonny's grandmother as well. Yeah.
All right. So you started bookmaking as a young boy in Western Pennsylvania.
Yep.
How did you get started?
Well, we grew up in a wise guy household. My Uncle Jack, we had a big Greek family all living in one house. We didn't know that was kind of weird. We just thought it was normal. Anyway, my uncle just never really hid what he did. He was a bettor, and he was a bettor, not really so much a bookmaker, just, as certain guys might call him in with a bet and he might put it in his pocket, but he wasn't really a bookmaker. But we saw his sheets every day or every week during football. And we started, my 2 cousins who I mentioned, Zach and Art, we would copy the line and create our own parlay cards. And we were in 5th grade. And it was highway robbery. Ties lose. Any game near Pick'em was -3 on both sides.
Wow.
I just like to do that. Games would be, if it was, a touchdown, -7 +6, -13 +10, things like that. I mean, and I'm not joking when I say this. We went 2 years and never paid one card. I mean, that's how big of an advantage we had. And, of course, you can't do that forever. People kind of catch on to you. But that was our first bookmaking experience.
I'm surprised that if you're giving -3 +3, I'm surprised it took any time for them to go, wait a minute.
It was -3 on both sides. -3, pick 'em game. -3 both sides. -3 both sides. How can you win?
These are fifth graders.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was betting with my dad in 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade on football, the Bears from Chicago. And, he explained to me because I would say, like, I will take the Bears +7 or whatever. And he said, okay, I'll take the Bears in 7. I'd be like, no, I only want, and he explained to me very young, like, you have to put up a line where you're willing to take either side.
Right.
So then I learned, like, oh, okay, you make the line. Let me decide after that.
Well, our line that we had, we would have taken money on either side there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, individual bets they can win.
But parlaying them.
But parlaying these.
Yeah, you ain't winning those too much.
All right. After college, you got your first Vegas job at the Sportsbook, for Sportsbook at the Stardust.
Right.
This was shortly after Lefty Rosenthal and Andy Spilotro went away. Things in that book weren't always run by the book, so to speak. Give us some, for instances, of the kinds of things that went on there.
Well, I could tell these stories now because most of these guys are gone. I wouldn't have told them a few years ago. But some of the things we do, like my guy, one of the bosses, he would, we wrote tickets, written tickets back in the day. So if you remember the way those tickets looked, he'd say, like, let's say, Steelers are playing the Bears. Okay, at the top of the ticket, write Steelers, -6.5. Leave the rest of the ticket, and then for like $1,000. And then on the other ticket, write the Bears, like +7.5 for $1,000. Again, right at the top of the ticket. So it took me a while to catch on. Why am I writing it at the top of the ticket? Well, it winds up they had one of the auditors in their pocket too. So after the game, and you could win both bets, of course, -6.5 +7. But let's say the Steelers won by 20. They would fill up the rest of the ticket and have like a 4-teamer going for them, and then void the other ticket. But when you have an auditor in your pocket, and kind of everybody was doing the same thing. And, I saw some.
It's not hard to win a 4-teamer if you can fill it out after the game is over.
It's not hard at all. It's really pretty easy. And, they did that. And then then later on, I think it was 1984, when I was with Cal Neva, and one of the owners of Cal Neva was Warren Nelson. He was also with the Boyd Group, and Boyd came in and took over the property after the state finally shut him down. So he asked me to come and go kind of audit the tickets and look and see what was going on. And I can remember one game in particular. It was Washington University playing Michigan in one of the Rose Bowls, and I think Michigan wound up being a 3-point favorite, but Washington blew them out. But you went through the tickets, and when they walked it all the way down, they had so remember, this is the underdog or the favorite. They had Michigan +13 for 2,000, Michigan +12.5 for 2,000, Michigan +12 for 2,000, Michigan. They walked it all the way down to 2,000 around. And I just remember, Michigan wound up being the favorite. They lost, but it was one of those. And then a couple.
Did they cover 12 points?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't cover. That's why I found the tickets. I remember seeing another one. They had the Phillies to win the World Series at 100-1 for $1,000, and it was written in mid-September when they had the lead in the division. And they wound up blowing the division. So they blew that too. So those are just some of the ones I saw. Now, when I was writing tickets, I would have Tony Spilotro's guy come in and he'd say, I remember one game, the Steelers are playing the Chargers. It was like a 3-point game. He says, okay, write me the Steelers -2.5 for 50,000, and write me the Chargers +4 for 50,000. And I would go get I says, it's their money. Let them do what they want. Okay. So those are some of the things.
So wait, that was still going on. First of all, don't hit the table.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That was still going on after Rosenthal was gone.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
Because that's right in the era of the movie Casino.
It's exactly that era.
Yeah. So when did that finally end?
Well, that's when the Boyd company, the Boyd group came in, and I think that was 1984, if I remember correctly. That's when they came in, and finally the state had enough of these shenanigans. And again, I was part of that team that came in, and I remember going through, and I don't know anything about slot machines. I really don't. But just going through, and the guy, I could still see the guy's face kind of showing me. He says, yeah, well, so we had like two buckets for the drop. This one went to the count room. This one went to Kansas City. This is just standard operating procedure. This is, and you wonder how it took so long for them to get shut down.
Well, I also remember back then they had, because when you had coins in slot machines, you didn't count them, you weighed them.
Right.
And they had rigged the scales to underreport how much money.
They didn't miss too many tricks, I'll tell you that. But I probably only know the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more than that, I'm sure.
Now, after you left the Stardust, you got a very responsible job at the Barbary Coast Sportsbook, which was owned by Michael Gaughan at the time, or owned and operated. You were still a pretty young guy.
Yeah.
And so to some extent you were juiced in, but still it was an amazing promotion. And then, of course, one day you misplaced $250,000, which must have been a really fun phone call for you to give to your Uncle Jack or whoever else you had to call.
It was Jimmy Vaccaro I had to call.
All right. So what did Jimmy say about...
Well, and how did you misplace $250,000?
Well, so we were taking big action at the time, and the producer was the one guy, James Toback, who kind of a legendary bettor in this town. He was betting us, and I can remember, Jimmy actually remembered the ticket. I didn't remember until he refreshed my memory. But he came in, he had $125,000 on one baseball game. So this was in baseball season. That's a big bet now. It's a huge bet back in 1980. And the way it worked, and the state would never let you do this now. I mean, they tightened up the regs after this, but I was a ticket writer. I was the cashier. I graded the tickets. And I filled out the sheet at the end of the night, the win and loss sheet. All that.
There's some potential for some funny business.
Yes, there is. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of potential. But like I said, Michael trusted me. Our families were, interconnected in a lot of ways. So that wasn't an issue. But he gave me a lot of responsibility. And I got to tell you, I learned so much about the business just in that year that I worked for Michael doing exactly that. Anyway, so the way the ledger sheet had worked, I put the $125,000 in the minus column, was supposed to be in the plus column. So now at the end of the night, I'm adding up money, and I'm like, gee, so $125,000, it's in the wrong column, and I don't realize. So I got off at midnight, and it's like about 2:30 in the morning, and I find I can't find this $250,000. So I called Jimmy Vaccaro.
You could have pulled it out of your pocket, though, huh?
Oh, sure, yeah. Wow, and had a couple bucks left over.
Yeah.
And so I called Jimmy. And, he's, of course, dead asleep. I said, Jimmy, I'm stuck. I said, I can't find $250,000. I'm short. First thing Jimmy says, no, Jimmy, well, did you take it? I says, well, Jimmy, if I took it, I would not be calling you. I'd be on an airplane probably to Brazil or something like that, but I did not take it. He says, well, just turn it in and the auditing will find it. And he hangs up on me. Now, knowing Jimmy, and I've known Jimmy since I'm 12 years old, so I've known Jimmy a long time. I guarantee he was asleep 10 seconds later. That's just the way Jimmy is. And even when Michael told me later on, he says, when he got into his office, he got in about 8 o'clock in the morning, and sitting on his desk is a note. Sportsbook was $250,000 short. And Michael says, I knew that didn't happen. He says, if you were short 5,000 or 10,000, I'd be really upset. But knowing it was 250,000, there's just no way. So he says, by about 8:15, auditing found it. I mean, I was not an auditor. I was learning the bookmaking business, and an auditor took about 15 seconds to say, "Oh yeah, this idiot put it in the wrong column." So they called Michael, and they called me at home, and I had a very restless night. And then they explained, you put that $125,000 ticket in the wrong column. Okay, that adds up to $250. Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's real simple after it's over.
Computers really made those things a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, but I've always said, can you imagine that now today, turning in your bank and you're 250,000 short? You ain't going home. You're going to jail. I mean, or you're going to the county. Somebody's going to figure something out. But that was just the way it was back then.
Well, it also helps that you had an owner as opposed to a corporation.
Oh, definitely. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So when you did well at the Barbary Coast, Michael Gaughan and others recommended you for a good position at Cal Neva up in Reno. Mm-hmm. You spent most of your career there. Mm-hmm. What made the Cal Neva successful?
Well, I think, Bob, a lot of it was just common sense. I grew up with my Uncle Jack. So I knew how gamblers, I knew what they wanted. I knew the market. And also with Michael Gaughan, I learned how to operate properly, how to operate a sports book. And a lot of it is just common sense that I used. And I know we're going to probably talk about this later on. One of the things that makes a South Point so good now is we do everything at minus 110. And that's part of the common sense that I would say. And everybody did that back in like 1981. But that's not so common these days. But we had really good parlay cards. We tried to put everything on the board that we could. We were very progressive as far as I think we were the first place that really had a satellite system as far as TVs. And, they put me through the ring. I mean, these were tough guys that I worked for, and they made me prove this. Everything I wanted to do, they wanted it all in writing. They were hard businessmen, but, it was a great lesson for me. And, I got to do a lot of things that I wanted to do. And, you know how the sports business is. There's a lot of ups and downs. And Warren Nelson, who was, I would say, the Jackie Gaughan of Northern Nevada, and Jackie and he were very, very good friends. Warren understood some days you're just going to lose. And you're going to, if you're taking big action, you're going to have some bad numbers. But over the course of time, of course, the bookmakers usually wind up with the money, and we did there. And, just as things went on, it, like I said, a lot of it was just common sense and doing things the right way.
I was always impressed with the Cal Neva. I mean, I thought physically it was kind of the biggest dump maybe in the state of Nevada, like the carpet, your feet would stick to it.
Oh, yeah. You could play basketball on that carpet.
And, it was the kind of place where, like the people had tattoos on their face and stuff, but they would take action much better than most of the other places in Reno, at least back then, in the 80s.
Yeah, back then. I can't answer for them now. It's under different ownership. And the guy who owns it is my friend. He is. But their sportsbook, they farmed that out to William Hill. And William Hill buying the Cal Neva sportsbook, that was part of, we wouldn't know William Hill today if they didn't buy the sportsbooks at Cal Neva, which I guess I got to take some fault in that, I guess. But yeah, we took a bet. Warren Nelson definitely, even his son would tell me, Warren had so much gamble in him. He'd cut cards with you for his entire bankroll. He was that kind of guy. Just had confidence in himself that he would always win, and he was that kind of guy. And that was my mentor from up there. And I learned a lot off of Warren. It was great having him on my side.
Now, William Hill has the reputation of, if you prove to them you can beat them, they'll cut you off or cut you down to, you can bet all you want at $100 a game.
110.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
So, how much Would you deal to wise guys at the Cal Neva?
I've never not dealt to wise guys. Never. Keep them to certain limits, whatever limits we establish. And, no, I've never thrown out guys for winning, whether I was at Cal Neva or my brief stay at the Golden Nugget or here at South Point. I've never done that.
Do you try to get their action early to adjust the line, or how do you deal with that?
Well, if I can, you can't always make them, it's their
Sure.
money. You can't make them bet. But, I've had deals with guys over the years where listen, if you bet me early, I'll put you down for more. Just give me time to maneuver. Because, a lot of these guys, we try to go in with their side if we can. Football, I think I have reasonable knowledge, football, NFL, and college. But, you get to college basketball. There's 300-some teams. How am I going to know every one of these guys, or even in baseball, a lot of times there's, especially nowadays, a lot of lineup changes and things like that. And, I try to go in with their side if and when I can. Sometimes you can't, but I always try to keep a good relationship with those guys. And I was showing this to one of the supervisors under me the other day, some guys that I have good relationships with, and sometimes they call me and text me. Some from out of state, maybe they're not going to play in my joint as it is. Hey, I heard this quarterback's out. Hey, this team has a bunch of COVID issues. Hey, this, and that's part of the relationship because it is a lot of information in this business, and sometimes those guys get it before you do. And I'm glad when they pass it on to me.
So, do you set the lines, or who sets the lines?
Well, it's really a lot different nowadays than it was in the old days. When I first came to town, like for football, Bob Martin set the line. That was the opening line, period. Now
He was at Stardust?
no, Bob was at Churchill Downs
Uh-huh.
and then went to Union Plaza. And, Bob set the line. So now there's some lines coming out of the Caribbean, some guys kind of out of Las Vegas, some lines are coming out of Europe. So when they say the opening line, who's opening line? So football, I set the line. I don't say, I make all my own numbers, but like if I make a number 7 and it's 4 everywhere, I'm not going to use 7. I might use 4.5 or 5, something like that. But then on a daily basis, like I said, with basketball, baseball, I let my guys, they get paid for. They set the line, they put it in, and there's like a consensus. At that point in time, we do overnights and stuff too, and we'd have to, there's a little more guesswork involved at that point in time. But eventually, it's not like the old days when you could walk up and down the strip in middle games and doing all that other stuff. It's a whole different racket now that, if you're a half point or point off, you're going to get bet into line pretty quickly.
But do you try to take a position sometimes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. It's great working for Michael and with Jimmy Vaccaro. Sometimes we'll be sitting there dead even on a game and Jimmy say, let's move something half a point. Let's go in sweating something tonight. Okay. So
that's different than thinking, I think the line should be 7 and everybody has 6. That's just, he just wants to gamble.
Listen, it's a great place. And, and Michael would be the first one to tell you, he says, we do not run a tight ship. We run a loose, and it filters down to the customers. And I think the whole place at South Point, Michael doesn't put up with a lot of crap. If you're not good to the customers, and that you ain't gonna be working there for long. But part of it too is like Michael will call him. He calls me on a Sunday morning. He says, "Well, I'm watching the TV game. Who do we need?" We really don't need anybody. Geez, give me something to root for. Well, we need to beat the teasers. I'll tell them something like that. Yeah, but sometimes you do go in even on a game, but a lot of times versus a game, like I said, Jimmy and I, let's move it half a point, see if we can need somebody in this one.
Just for your betting interests? It's not a financial decision?
Oh, it's not for listen, I bet very infrequently at this point. Like I'm in a couple contests around town, things like that. But, going out and picking a side and betting, geez, I haven't done that for a long time. I might bet a future book, but this is just for us. Listen, you know how it is. You're getting 11 to 10. You're getting 11 to 10. If you need a side, you need a side. That's all.
Tell us about Max.
Oh, geez. I knew you were going to ask me, Max. I saw it in the note. So when I got to Cal Neva, I was 25 years old. I was still a little green, probably not as green as most guys that age, because I did work at the Stardust. Like I said, I grew up in a household with my Uncle Jack. So I had seen and dealt with some mob guys, a little bit over the years. I don't want to say I knew it that well. I really didn't. So I think Max kind of saw me as maybe some guy that he could maybe take advantage of a little bit, because I think all those guys, that's their nature. Scorpion is a scorpion, and I actually kind of liked him, and he liked me too. And as things went on, he was interested in this one young lady, and so was I. And we wound up, her and I actually wound up getting married. We went out together. But Max, along the way, he told me that he was a hitman for Meyer Lansky. He killed like 52 people, or 53.
Uh-huh.
And I,
let him have the girl.
Yeah. Anyway, I knew a guy. I knew a guy who knew a guy, and I wound up getting a hold of him. He and this guy's long passed away now too, but this guy was working in a book, bookmaking operation, and Lansky was under Lansky's wing. And I called him up, and I said, do you know this guy? I kind of described him, and I remember he said, he goes, I don't know him. He says, but it does sound like the kind of guy Meyer would use. Now, Meyer was known for Lucky Luciano, who was a little bit of a loose cannon himself, He says, it sounds like the kind of guy Meyer might use. And I just remember before hanging up, he says, listen, Chris, be careful. Okay. And I was careful. Anyway, one day Max, like I said, we were friends. We were definitely friends. He hit me up. And I was 25 years old. He hit me up. He needed $800. He said, I'm out of money. I got a package coming in, which I've heard that story like a million times. I got a package coming in. I'll take care of you, on Friday. So whatever it was, I give him the $800. He disappears. So it's one of those deals where, like I said, when I count myself down at night, I never included that 800. I can tell you that. So I figured, well, it's long gone. And he was a horse racing degenerate. He really was. Big horse racing degenerate. Way more than sports. So anyway, this is me and this young lady one day. We had the day off. We said, well, let's go down to Bay Meadows. Spend the day at the racetrack at Bay Meadows.
That's in the San Francisco area.
Outside of San Francisco, yeah. In San Mateo. So we go down, and, we're betting the horses. We're up in the turf club. And, we're playing, and so I go around the corner, and who do I see? Max coming my way. Now, like I said, I knew enough of these guys that you can't just let it go, because they'll take advantage of you as much as they can. But you had to be careful too. The guy claimed that he killed 53 people. So I'm there, and I'm with she was my girlfriend at the time. There's, hey, Max. And I looked at her. I says, go take a walk. And I'm thinking, if he's going to kill me, I don't want him killing her. I mean, I love this girl. I don't, And you never knew what he was going to do. I mean, because he did some crazy stuff. So anyway, I saw Max. I says, hey, Max, when are we going to get that 800 back? He says, oh, I was going to do it, but I've been in the hospital. I said, you've been in the hospital? He goes, yeah, I got shot. I said, well, congratulations. And he looked at me, he goes, well, what do you mean? And Max was one of those guys whose weight always went way up and down, way up and down. He says, yeah, I got shot. I've been in the hospital for a month. I says, well, congratulations. What are you talking about? I says, well, you're the first guy in history that went in the hospital and put on 30 pounds. And he started laughing. I said, okay, well, I don't think he's going to kill me. So, but somewhere in my mind, I'm thinking, boy, that was really kind of a ballsy thing to say.
It is kind of calling him a liar.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So he starts laughing, and he says, listen, because I know, kid, you were real good to me. He says, I didn't mean to stiff you or anything, because I run into some trouble. He said, but, he said, I'll get back up to Reno, and I'll make it good. That's okay. I said, listen, I was 25 years old. $800 was, something, but it wasn't life and death. But we had that kind of relationship, right? Obviously I could joke with him without getting murdered. So anyways, not long after that, like a few weeks or months after that, and I used to, back in the old days, we used to get all the out-of-town papers, mostly follow sports stories and stuff like that. And I always got the San Francisco Chronicle. So I get the Chronicle, and I'm going through it, and I see on the local section, this guy got murdered in a parking lot of a San Mateo motel. I read, and it's Max Kirshner. And I'm thinking he must have stiffed some other guy who maybe, like I said, wasn't a wise guy, or probably just some guy, and didn't take it very kindly. And the guy put a shotgun up to his neck and killed him. And that same day, there was the story, and right next to it was a picture of Meyer Lansky, who was in some California courtroom for something totally unrelated. And I'm thinking to myself, somebody in that copy room kind of knows. And this was kind of like a message out there that these two stories are somewhat related, although the text never referred to either one of them as being related. But I said, somebody in that copy room knew something. And the weird thing was, he got murdered, spent a lot of time in Reno. I mean, the cops never came to Reno, never asked one question. I thought they might ask me. Did owe me money, and I wasn't the only guy that knew that. Stole his girlfriend, but they never asked me one thing. Nothing.
That's two separate motives.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two right there,
And you still deny that you did it.
Absolutely. Even though the statute of limitations might be up, but I'm still going to deny
For
it.
murder? I don't know.
Yeah, murder, probably not. No.
All right. Roxy Roxborough. You knew him before he was Roxy Roxborough.
I did.
Tell us about your relationship and how it progressed through the years.
Well, I'll tell you how I ran into Roxy one time. I was in the old Santa Anita Sportsbook, and I had a baseball parlay, and I had like 3 in, and we don't have. Well, it's not like the computers today. It tells you how much you got coming. I said, geez, I don't know if I should hedge back or something like that. And I'm thinking there, and I asked the guy, I says, do you know what this thing pays? He says, I don't know. He says, but go ask that guy over there. He's pretty good with numbers. He'll tell you what it is. So I walked by. I says, hey, Roxy, I'm Chris, could you tell me what this thing's going to pay? He says, yeah, sure. So he figures out because it's going to pay, whatever. And that was my first time I ever met Roxy. So just knew him, kind of say hello to him. That was our first thing. So then I'm up at Cal Neva, and he came up, and I knew he was a sharp bettor. And this was back in the days. Baseball totals was like this new thing. Guys don't realize that today. These things were not always around. And I was getting totals from my Uncle Jack, very old school. There's no like 8 over a quarter, 8.5 under, nothing like that. Totals were all like, 8, 8.5, 9, and Roxy was betting me the totals, and he was killing me. And so after a while, I got to know him, and I said, listen, when you're done betting, would you just tell me where I should be with these totals? And he said, yeah, sure. So he started telling, and like once he gave me, like he'd be betting, we were taking a nickel at the time. So he'd bet 2 or 3 bets, and he'd say, here's where you should be on this total.
That's $500.
$500, yeah. Here's what you should take. Here's where you should be on this total. And his totals were always like, A1. So anyway, he was up there. And again, that shows you I never threw out wise guys or anything like that. I tried to go and needing his sides. So anyway, he told me, he says, hey, listen, it's been nice, working with you, talking and all that. I think we went out to dinner, had a couple drinks once or twice. So I'm heading back to Las Vegas. I says, well, listen, since you're not going to be here, how about you calling me every day and tell me what the baseball total should be? He says, yeah, I guess I could do that. He says, what do you think it's worth? I said, yeah, I don't know. How about $200 a week? He says, sure, I'll do it. Like no napkin, no cocktail, nothing. $200 a week. Sure. Okay. So that went on for like a couple of weeks. I says, you know what? I'm making you the call every day. Why don't I just, because I know you're getting Jack Franzi's line. Why don't I give you my line too? At least you have 2 numbers to look at. I said, that sounds great. So we started doing that. And then, coming into football season, my Uncle Jack, he didn't want to do half times. So I said, Rox, can you start calling me with the half times? Now, back then, we only did TV games. It was a whole different market. Started doing it. So eventually.
And there were only 3 channels.
There was only 3. Yeah, you had 2 games on Sunday. That was it. So we start, and then at some point we kind of formalized the deal. I said, like my buddy, we got to get a contract with this guy. So we got a contract. And once again, so this is now when 1984 came along. So he had a contract with us. When Boyd Group went in and took over the Stardust, Warren Nelson, who got to know Roxy, right? And it's funny because Roxy was kind of like a hippie kid, long hair. I always used to make fun of him. He wore tuxedo pants, and like a jogging suit top. Warren pulled him aside. Listen, if you're going to do anything in this business, this look ain't going to cut it. You got to cut your hair. He goes, you might want to shave your beard. You might not, but you got to cut your hair. I mean, he had long red hair down to his shoulders. You got to cut your hair. You got to start dressing more professionally. He said, if you do that, I'll try to get you in with the Boyd Group. And that, so Roxy did that, started wearing like a tie, even to this day. There's a recent picture of us. He didn't have a tie on. I had a tie on, which I wore kind of as a joke. And it's the last time I've seen him without a tie, and I don't know how long. But anyway, the Boyd Group at the Stardust hired him, and, the Stardust was, right then kind of like the king of sports books, and Roxy was making the line for them. So that really made Roxy's career go through the roof. But I always used to joke, Roxy used to sleep on my couch, as he was coming back and forth to Reno. And like I said, we got to be really good friends. We wound up going to dinner all the time and having a few cocktails, betting a lot of horses together. We both love the horses, still do. Just doing all kind of stuff together. And, we've been close friends for, over 40 years now. And I owe a lot of my career, where I am in life, to Roxy, and he owes a lot to me, too. I mean, when he got my book and I signed the book, I says, my dear friend, where would we be without each other? Probably out drinking and gambling somewhere, because that's probably what we would be doing without each other.
So you left the Cal Neva in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
You had a brief stop at the Golden Nugget, which didn't go as well as you had planned.
No.
Can you give a short? It's like, I was a player then. I know who Tim and Tom are.
Yeah.
And our audience probably doesn't. But they had it for a couple years, and then they got an offer they couldn't refuse.
Yeah. Well, I was an owner of Cal Neva at that point. And really, Cal Neva was not doing well at the time. So I was kind of looking to move on and sell my piece and move on. But I was looking for one last job in my life. I was, 45 at the time. And, Tim and Tom, Tim's my cousin. And Tom, I knew from the time he was, 21 years old. So I knew these, Tim, I considered Tom almost like family. So anyway, these guys went down there. They bought it. They wanted me to come down, so I had to sell my piece of the Cal Neva. Came down, and I thought these guys wanted to be maybe like the way the Gone family is. And at the time, Michael was still with the Coasts, which Boyd wound up buying.
Suncoast, Barbary Coast,
Suncoast, Barbary
Orleans,
Coast,
and Gold Coast.
The South Coast at the time.
South Coast, but I don't think
South
it was
Point was originally the South Coast.
I agree there, but I don't think South Coast was open at that point.
No, it was not. Shortly, I think they were in the process of planning it and building it. But I thought, Tim and Tom wanted to be like this. So I sold my piece of the Cal Neva, came down here, and I took a pretty hefty cut in pay, pretty significant. But I felt that it was best in the long-term interest of my family. They wound up selling. I think they made, their group made about $160 million in 18 months. Pretty good.
That's more than Richard makes in a week.
It's more than Richard makes in a week, really?
Yeah.
Well, in a bad week, anyway, So, and then I was kind of left high and dry. And, did they do anything wrong? No. But, for what I gave up to, I just, they bought low and sold high. Was what you're supposed to do, but I was not. Even my Uncle Jack told me, you didn't take care of Chris. I just thought, and I had a contract, and I wound up. I have to be careful. We had differences, and we had them resolved. That's the way I'm supposed to say it. but I just felt like,
to the mutual satisfaction of all parties.
yeah, exactly. Did you read that? Did you get into my email and see? No, but that was, it didn't work out the way I wanted to. But I wound up on my feet here with Michael gone in South Point, so I think things worked out in the end.
So what? Now I say you're the head guy at the Sportsbook. That can't be what's on your business card. What is on your business card at the South Point? What is your title? Director of the Sportsbook.
Yeah, director.
And does that report directly to Michael Gahn?
Well, I do, but we have a general manager too, who
Ryan
Groundy, who I talk to too. So I mean, they're both my boss. So.
All right, now we're going to take a commercial break. We still have lots more questions for you, and for our listeners, we are skipping about 80% of the stories that are in the book. You've heard a taste of them. I think you want to read this book. It is not if you have any savvy about sports books, it's not a how to be a sports bettor. I mean, there's other books for that, but this is just to have a good time reading stories about the good old days in our industry. It's a lot of fun. The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more than anyone else has. In November, earn up to 10 Walmart cards at half price, 10 $50 Walmart cards at half price. Normally, $8,334 coin in earns you $25 in cash or free play. This month, you can exchange points earned in November for $50 Walmart cards. You do not keep your points. This makes their 0.3 slot club, 0.3% slot club, effectively worth 0.6% for the first $83,340 coin in. On Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, there's a $32,000 hot seat promotion from 8 a.m. to midnight. Every hour, 20 lucky players playing with their card inserted win $100 in free play. You must have played at least $1 in the previous minute to be eligible.
Hey guys, this is Colin from BlackjackApprenticeship.com, and if you're serious about card counting, I'd encourage you to check out the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. It has the training tools you'll need to beat the game, like our comprehensive video course and our training suite, so you can learn each skill and virtually test yourself before ever stepping foot in a casino. It also includes the tools you'll need to succeed, like our pro betting software, casino database, results tracking software, and access to a community of like-minded Advantage players to network with in our members forum and chat room software. You can find out more at blackjackapprenticeship.com.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the Gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Powerhouse Poker. This is a 10 coins per line game where you get dealt extra hands, some with multipliers, when you are dealt a paying combination. For example, if you're dealt 2 pair, you may be given hands and 4 of them have multipliers from 4x to 8x. How many extra hands you get and how big the multipliers are varies from game to game. The extra hands start from the same position and same hold as you made. Let's say you're dealt 2 pair queens and 5s in a game where it's correct to hold both pair, which is most games. Should you decide to hold only the queens, as many players incorrectly do, the extra hands will all start from holding a pair of queens. The game always returns more than the 5-coin version of the same pay schedule, and no strategic variations are necessary in order to play the game accurately. A new version of this game, Powerhouse Poker Plus, was displayed this year at the Gaming Expo a month ago. It was created to take advantage of the taller screens. Now, instead of one hand with an 8x multiplier and another with a 10x multiplier, you actually receive 18 different hands. This has effect of lowering the variance than the older version. All right, we're back to Chris Andrews. Several of our sports betting gurus that we've had on the air have said the 3 best sports books in Las Vegas are the South Point, Circa, and Westgate. Do you concur, and what makes them better?
Well, I do concur. And let me just say that the guys running those other two places are my friends. But of course,
Not your cousins.
no, not right now. No.
Maybe next week they'll be.
Well,
your
I mean, there may be a marriage here and there. God only knows. But no, they're my friends, and they do a really good job. I think in a couple. Well, let me talk first about South Point. Again, I think we keep things really simple at the South Point. Everything we do is at 11 to 10 as far as straight bets off the board. And as far as I know, we're the only ones doing that. Everybody else, they go to $1.20, $1.15, especially in football, 3s and 7s. We don't do that. And I think that's something our customers greatly appreciate. That, listen, you walk in, you might have to lay 3.5 instead of 3, but you're only going to lay 11 to 10. I can tell you that. And it keeps a lot of other things really simple. The other things I think that we do very well is service our customers. On Saturday and Sunday, we have 12 ticket writers and 11 kiosks. So if you don't get in on time, it's nobody's fault but your own.
And the phone app.
And the phone app, too. Yeah, so we try to do all we can. Now, Michael gone, we've cut our phone app limits, which I don't think the other guys have done. Now, Michael and I disagreed with that, but I have to say, Michael's made a lot more great decisions about this business than I have. And I can tell you, since we'd have cut the limits on the phone app, because Michael said they want these people to come into the sportsbook. And I can tell you, our sportsbook handle is still really good. The tickets written on the window and on the sports app have gone up. And I can tell you, the bottom line, the numbers at the South Point are pretty darn incredible. And, so I could tell you, Michael's strategy definitely worked in that regard. Now, some of the things that I think my competitors have done that have forced us to take a more active role in some, things like props, some futures, things like that. And, it was difficult because really right now I'm running about 3 supervisors short, and I'm reflective of like most of the world right now is running on short staff. And, and Michael, I think our ticket writers and sportsbook supervisors, I think are the highest paid in town, but you do have to work. And we had one young lady who came in, and I don't want to say too much about her because she was actually, I met her, she's a very nice young lady. She was a supervisor elsewhere in town. She came and worked one day at South Point, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and went home crying and quit, because it was a lot of work. There's no, like I said, Michael runs a loose ship. He definitely does, and nobody gets screamed at or undressed in front of them. That's not the way we do things. But there's a lot of business, and we got to take care of business. And like I said, she worked one day and went and quit the next day. So our people work hard. They earn their money. But Michael, in turn, I think has the highest paying jobs in town in that category. And that's part of the thing. We do a lot of business, and a lot of it, as I said, even at Cal Neva, a lot of it is just common sense stuff that we do. And because these guys have kind of raised the bar a little bit, we've raised our bar too and try to keep up with them.
Now, William Hill owns half the sports books in town or so, some number, and they cut off people quickly or fairly quickly. And you don't cut off people.
No.
How can both models work in the same town?
Well, the only thing I could say about William Hill is, they bought the Cal Neva sports books, they bought Leroy sports books, and they had, Lucky's, which Brandy wanted.
Well, they have Caesars now too, don't
now they have Caesars. But when they first got into it,
which is half the
other half
in town.
Yeah. I don't know. I Bob, I really can't give you a good answer because I don't like their model. There's some stories about me working with Cal. When I left Cal Neva, they hired me back when they were going through the transition, when they were being bought by William Hill. which I again speaks that I got along well with, even though they're my former partners. They wanted me back to help them with the transition, and I was like the lead of the main team. They had different streams they call the work streams, and I was leader of the work stream, the bookmaking work stream. Now they had others, legal and marketing and accounting and whatever, but the business was the bookmaking. That's the business, and I was the lead of that stream. And when things ended, they gave me like a, in all honesty, an insulting offer to stay with them, and I didn't. And I remember my wife telling me at the time, she goes, "You got lucky. You did not want to be part of this outfit." I said, "Well, honey, I hope you're right." And she was, as wives often are, or at least they tell you they are. I hope she's not listening to this one. Anyway, she was right, and things wound up good for us. But I don't think they would have worked out so well had I stayed with William Hill.
So, the current book, and then one day, came out 2 years ago. Mm. We Richard and I read it at the time, and then there were health issues, so that we couldn't get you on the air then. So, a sequel of sorts, Then 1 Year, is coming out within the next month or so. Anthony's doing it again, and he told us before the show, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, he thinks. How is Then 1 Year any different or how similar from Then One Day?
Well, I read a book many years ago written by Larry Merchant, who was on HBO and did a lot of, boxing mostly, but did some sports betting too. Anyway, his book was called The National Football Lottery. And his book, he got a $35,000 advance. This is 1973. And to go and bet for a football season and document it. Well, I mean, I loved that book. I thought it was great. And being from Pittsburgh, as you can see, I'm wearing my Steelers shirt. It was kind of...
Most of our audience can't see that.
Yeah, I don't think they can. But you two can. Anyway, it was kind of like the rise of the Steelers, and it was the year the Dolphins went undefeated and won the Super Bowl. I thought it was a fascinating book. And I always kind of just had it in the back of my mind. So people told me I had to write a follow up to Then One Day. I didn't, and I didn't want to do the exact same book. So I thought, let me have a journal of a year in the life of a bookmaker. Go from one Super Bowl to the next, and because it's one of those things. Every Monday or whatever, guys from all over. How did the sportsbook do? And they always want, everybody's interested. How'd the sportsbook do? And my one friend said, nobody goes to Foot Locker after they released the new, how did Foot Locker do over the weekend? Nobody cares. Nobody does that. But everybody wants to know how the sportsbook did on the weekend. So I said, you know what? I think that would be a good book. So I started with Super Bowl, 2 years ago, and then we had, Kobe Bryant passed away, and, it was obviously very traumatic. There were some health issues that I was getting through at the time. And now all of a sudden COVID comes around. Well, nobody saw this coming. So I'm writing every day, and I got about halfway through, and I sent Deke Castleman and Anthony Curtis. I said, listen, this is nowhere near what I thought this book was going to be. Are you still interested? And, they said, yeah, we think this is good. We think this is great. I mean, you're writing, first of all, they liked my writing, which I appreciate that. I said, yeah, this is interesting. I said, okay, I'm just going to keep writing. Now, keeping a journal every day, I wound up, I did exactly what I set out to do. Now, there's a lot of stuff in there. Like I said, COVID, who saw this COVID coming? You go back, there was some racial unrest, big racial unrest that affected sports.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to keep it to sports, but there was a lot of political unrest. I mean, we had a contentious presidential election, but also like the Senate, and there's all kind of stuff going on. So I tried to keep it to sports related. Well, at the end of it, I had 160,000 words that I think 175,000. I said, well, this ain't going to go. This is like, 3 volumes, So I started cutting. I got it down to about 160. And I think I sent it to Deke Castleman at that time. He said, well, we got to cut the hell out of this. Matter of fact, I even met with Anthony and Deke and said, should we still do this? I don't know if we should. And they said, yes, absolutely. We got to cut out all the, that's way too long. Anthony wanted the book to be no more than 90,000 words. Well, I had close to double that. But, you're just writing on a daily basis. So I, talked to Deke and, well, we can cut this, we can cut that. Cut. So finally, Deke got it down to, I think, 96,000. He says, well, what do you think? Can you cut 6,000 more? I said, well, let me see. So we go, I went through and I cut. I said, Deke, I got it down to 90,028 words.
Not enough. Go back.
Deke said, well, if I can't find 28 words, I give up. So
there are a lot of contractions that can.
So whatever Deke did, he found, but it, the book is not what I thought it'd be like a fun journey, really, to go through a year in the life of a bookmaker. But 2020 was not very fun for any of us. I mean, I had, I had a good friend that passed away from COVID. He got it one day and died the next. Actually, died the same day. I mean, so we had that. I had my godson who passed away from a prescription drug overdose. I had my son who lives here in town got jumped and mugged. I mean, a lot of people know, some don't. I was recovering from a bone marrow transplant. I got COVID. My wife got COVID. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy year. And it's documented from the perspective of a Las Vegas bookmaker and how it related to sports and gambling. And, I mean, so there's a lot of other books out there if you want to read about COVID or read about the year in politics. There's plenty of other books out there. But I think this is the only one that focuses it from my eyes as how it relates to sports and sports betting and, how the casinos and how Las Vegas and, how we dealt with this whole thing. So, once we got done with Deke and Anthony, they thought it was good, so we're going to put it out there. And I think it's pretty good too. Now, the first book, there's a lot of humor in that book. There wasn't that much funny about 2020, but I tried to inject as much humor as I possibly could, in the right time and in the right veins, as it were.
You seem like a guy who can't help but do that. It just comes out automatically.
I've had people tell me that.
That's one of my curses as well.
You mentioned your son. Have any of your kids gone into the business, followed you?
No, my 2 sons, they might know who the Yankees are, but except for my one son lives in Seattle, so he might know the Mariners. And they just had no interest in sport. And I took them to games and stuff like that. Now my daughter, my wife had 2 kids, so but my daughter, my biological daughter, she loves sports. Now she's not in the business or anything like that, but she'll call me on Sundays and she'll curse out the Steelers or the Penguins or something. She went to Penn State. You can't believe they blew that game, and so she's a big fan.
Still talking about Iowa?
What's that?
Is she still talking about Iowa?
I'll tell you what, she hates Michigan so bad. And if she ever found out that I bet on Michigan in a lot of those games, she may never talk. Well, until she'd probably talk to me, but she'd be upset. A lot of those games, like Michigan, kind of had our number, and I was on Michigan in a lot of those. Of course, once it kick off, still room for Penn State, but room for my wallet at some point too.
It was a lot of fun. We're looking forward to your sequel. We will definitely have you back on, and probably early in 2022. It's been fun. You're a great storyteller. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
At the end of our show, we have a recommended section. Richard, do you have anything to recommend to our audience today?
Well, I'm going to recommend it even though I haven't seen it yet. I was a big fan of the show Dexter and also read the books that the show is based on. And it's a series on Showtime about a guy who's a serial killer He only kills people who deserve it, basically. He finds other serial killers and kills them. And I think there were 5 seasons originally, and the new season just premiered last night. We're recording this on Monday, and so I haven't recorded. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to the new season of Dexter.
All right. My recommendation is a new book by David Baldacci. It's called A Gambling Man. Now, I read and enjoy most of Baldacci's books. This one is the second in the Aloysius Archer series. It's set in the late 1940s, where Archer is a war veteran and on his way to get a job training to be a private eye in Bay City, California, which is a fictional city approximately where Santa Barbara is. Archer hooks up with an old Seamus, and together they try to solve a case with a very nice mix of blackmail, murder, family secrets, pretty girls, and double-crossing. I found the title misleading. Gambling constitutes a relatively small piece of the plot, and none of the major characters can fairly be called a gambling man. Still, it's a fun whodunit set 75 years ago, and it held my attention. So, Chris Andrews, I got your name right. This is one in a row.
Yeah.
Do you have recommended for us?
Well, I'm a big Sopranos fan, and I'll just tell you, when the show first came on, Sopranos, I thought it was like some opera show. So I didn't watch it. My Uncle Jack, I talk about a lot in my book. Hey, are you watching The Sopranos? I said, no. Why would I do that? He says, oh, no. It's about this mob family out of Jersey. It's hilarious. So right away I went in with the thought, like, there's a lot of humor in this show. So I saw it, and I kind of did catch on to the humor because I think it's really a funny show. It's very dark, but there's also a lot of comedy in that show. And I just became a Sopranos nut. And during, COVID, I watched the whole thing again. I got the book by Alan Sepinwall and Matt Zoller. I'm reading that. My wife just got me Woke Up This Morning. Which is based on the podcast by Steve Sciarippa and Michael Imperioli. And I listen to that podcast religiously. I can't wait to watch the whole series, because my wife and I watched the entire series again. Can't wait to watch the whole series one more time at least. But I love all these books. And the only thing I'll tell you about, I kind of compare The Sopranos to the Beatles a little bit. Now,
they had shorter hair.
A lot shorter, a little meaner. But I remember, like, even now, I still love the Beatles, and I go back and listen to a Beatles song, and every once in a while I'll say, I never really noticed, John doing that on rhythm guitar, Ringo's drum, and, and I think The Sopranos kind of the same way. And go back, it's almost like literature. There's so many little things in The Sopranos that makes it interesting. And even though I've seen every episode at least 3 or 4 times, I'll go back and watch them again. And I say, I never quite noticed that. And reading these books that I had, and I'm halfway through the one by Alan Sepinwall, but the other one, my wife just got me the other day it just got released last Tuesday. And she got it for me that day. And I can't wait to get into that one too. And, so that's my recommendation, even though it's 20 some years old. I think it started in 99 or 98. It's still relevant for guys like me who've kind of been around mob guys a lot. Even though you're not in them, I don't want to pretend I'm something I'm not. But I've seen those guys and been around them, and I've actually met Steve Sciarippa, and when I was at the Golden Nugget, Paulie Walnuts, who's Tony Sirico, and Michael Imperioli came in and was betting horses with me, so they wouldn't know me. We didn't really meet. But I've seen them around, and they all seem like pretty good guys. And I think the show's fantastic, and the books about them are fantastic. The podcast is fantastic. So that's it's kind of an old thing, but I still think it's fantastic.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chris Andrews. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.